First operating round after all the corporations floated. This is an interesting point in the game. Obviously, there's more trains going to come out. We've got 3 new companies. The 4 trains are there. The 5s are going to come out. There's going to be an opportunity for the miners to merge. There may be a requirement to merge if the 6s come out, because when the corporations come out this fast, it's quite possible that we'll just skip right through and there'll be no opportunity to make an optional merge. The miner is kind of interesting. So this guy's running for 50 and 50, which is still pretty good, but there's no room on these to hold another train anymore. So there's a lot of shenanigans that can't be done now. Conceivably, over here, the 2 train could buy another train, but I think the 5s are going to come out before I have an opportunity to run it. So I'd rather keep the cash on hand than a garbage train. So I'm just not going to make my run this time. I don't have to buy a train. Likewise with the 3, I don't have to buy a train. And there's no real reason for me to screw around with the track here. I'll probably just be causing problems for myself in terms of when those upgrade to green tiles. So I'm not going to do that with either of those companies. Although one of the companies did do it. The 4 built this up. Not making any money off of it. In fact, it actually cost them money, I think. No, not the 4. The 5 did it. Yeah. The 5 built this up because it's hurting some of the other companies for that to be there. And they'll do the same here. They don't really see themselves as likely to be holding a valuable pair-up. They may be actually holding a real train wreck if they're not careful. So the idea of extending these and making them more valuable seems of less importance to them than cutting someone else's revenue at this point. Now this is the point in the game in an 1830 game that breaks you. It either breaks you or makes you. It's right around this period, and it feels like it's the same here, but there's one more point in the game that some important things are going to happen, i.e. when these guys cross, whether they choose to do that, and then there's a lot of bigger trains that, unlike 1830, it looks like there's actually, because of that extra money from the cross, there's a possibility that the companies might refresh the bank. In fact, a high likelihood that keeps the game running a little longer. For the NT, I ran 22 or 220 bucks. And now the question is, do I swallow that or not? I've already crossed the line, so that's not an indication, but I only have 30% because I crossed the line. I don't have enough money for a permanent train. I don't have enough money, obviously, to play around in here. Now, granted, I have tons of money on this sucker, but I think I'm going to swallow anyway because I'm only holding 30% of this sucker. And that'll bankroll me. I may not get another chance to run a 3 and a 4 train. The NT, with him holding large percentages, seems like a different situation. But he has desires to cut around this SB. He's worried about the fact that if he gets ahead in the stock price, he's going to get cut off in the dotting here. So instead what he did is spend $100, and he only made a $20 run, a $200 run, to build a tunnel through here. His next tunnel comes through here. He gets a possibility of breaking out this way. How good, how bad is that? It's hard to tell. There are, one of the things is there's these gray cities, which might be a route to open up something interesting for, say, either the KRSB to be able to get and play back here. There's only 2 of them, though. The browns are all 2-dot cities, and those won't allow them. All we need is 1 of them, though, to get through. And then a yellow dot here, and this guy's companies end up very, very solid position, controlling the middle of the track. So that's what the NT's trying to avoid here. And he can put a gentle curve this way or this way without hitting this track. So he's in fine shape, I think. If we actually align it, it kind of crosses the track. But I don't think that counts. interesting use of tunnels, right? I mean, obviously you're allowed to lay track through here, and none of the track that you lay through here will not go across part of that. So, I mean, you're allowed to lay tunnels because there's a tunnel space there. So, anyway, that's what we're seeing from the NT. It took a swallow as well. He doesn't have a second company, but he's taking a bigger hit from this. But that's okay. I think in the long run, I want to get this swallow into my hands. And I forgot to take his mail run. Got to be real careful about them because there's something different in this game. And that puts us to, I guess, the big stack here, starting with the KE. Factors in this game are leading to crazy stuff. For example, the KE here, only running a 3 train, made $9, 90 bucks. I'm swallowing so that I don't cross the line, so that I keep my 60% at least for the next run. Now, that option is going to happen to me all the time, right? Well, maybe, maybe not. But at this particular point, I want to collect my income a little bit longer before I start running out. I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of my 7 certificates. Paying out gives me cash, right? But I don't see a tremendous use for a ton of cash, whereas these certificates at double seem decent. I have enough money. I think I'm being stupid. I think I'm going to pay it out. And yes, I have this kind of problem when I'm playing too. Let's pay it out. Thinking about it, worse than paying it out. Do I want to upgrade this indeed? I need this for the run, but not really. I can make a $10 bigger run. Let's do this instead. And that let's not do that track though. Let's do this track. That gets me a little bit better run. And I exercised my tunnel option to do that. Now, the SB wanted this too, because now they're going to be able to token in there and control one of the opening routes. That's great for them, but it's really good for me because no one else can reach this once this is dotted, and then I can upgrade. I'm sorry, the KR wanted this. No one else can reach it, and then they can upgrade. Who's got the KR? That fellow up there, the #1 player. And I have some time to get my dot there. And then possibly I can run down into here, where I have one more dot for, say, down here, if that's what I want, and that'll allow a potential Orient Express run. Dreaming? Probably, you know, but whatever. Next one to run with the KB, and you can see they blasted track out this way. They don't care about the doinker too much. They may regret that later, but not a whole hell of a lot of money on the corporation. They're looking at the potential for having to buy a permanent train for one of these guys. I hope I bought my train. I paid for it, but I didn't take it. Take a 4 train. I don't want 2 of them. I'm not buying a 4 train for those guys. They don't need a 4 train, by the way. They're going to be using, well, they might eventually, but they get to buy obsolete trains. Which, they may have enough cash to be able to do that without much pain, because these guys only cost these guys only cost, no, wherever they are, the 2s, they only cost $130. So, of course, they do go obsolete when the 4s get rebought. After the 8s have been bought, the 4s are available, and then they can be bought. And the 3s, once they're obsolete, will be available at the $30 fee. So if things go well, I'll be able to buy perhaps a 3 right off if I have enough cash. Otherwise, I have to buy a stupid 2, and that increases my overall cost for the corporation. I don't believe these guys can hold the obsolete trains. And likewise, I don't believe those can hold the good trains. even whether they can run them or not. I'd have to look that up. But yeah, in the long run, I'm looking for a good route there that kind of I can work with that KE and help set it up. And, you know, if I'm looking at an Orient Express eventually or whatever, and I have a lot of cash sitting in here, not these shares, but below that, those guys, and those can be bought irrespective of the par value, so they're actually something I can buy up with my next purchase at the same price as par and put cash right into the treasury that I can use right away. And that's going to put us on the SB, another starting railroad. It's going to take some thought too. You know, trying to figure out what your eventual route's going to be. Early in the game, you're looking to maximize your income, but at this point, when you're starting a company, you really kind of have to look at, wow, everything's going to change real fast, real soon. You don't have that slow, stately progression that allows you to, like, you know, capture the things that make you money at first and then move on, where you have to worry about how quickly you're going to make it to, you know, where you're really starting to rack in the cash. SB here is making the kind of move that I would never normally make in an opposed game. They spent money on a tunnel. This hooks them up and gets them a threat of getting into Vienna. They have to make a choice. They don't have a lot of dots. They can't run coast to coast, well, border to border, east-west. So there's some possibility they might be able to slip in up here and run as one of the Vienna runs with very little without a big train or anything like that. Unfortunately for them, the VB is their buddy and would be able to help them and is in the other direction. But I viewed that it's going to be really tough to get these gray tiles upgraded. I'm not sure. We'll see. But the other alternative would have been to swing in here, but remember, there's no tight tunnels. As a matter of fact, give me $10 back, right? I don't need a tunnel there. I'm not really that concerned with preventing people from using that hex for other complex reasons, although I had considered that. Now, I am $10 short of buying the next train. I probably would have bought it if I could, but I kind of need to build this track, right? This is not, this is over here or something. It's over here. Yeah, there's no connection here. So I'm not going to be able to, you know, I was looking to see if I could get a free track light, but I do need to hook this up. Could I wait until somebody else does it? You know, I really could. Whatever's done here, I can give me my money back. Yeah, this is really an annoyance. But I think the point is that I do want the first 5 train. My consideration was, yeah, I'm not going to buy it. But, you know, I don't have a lot of train over here. I need some time for this to run its way out and start making money in the yeah, out of its stock pool. I don't expect this to be able to do so very easily. So I think the best way to do that is to buy the train. All right, really what this was all about. The thinking was, if I don't buy this train now, the VB is not the next running company, is it? Nah, there's one more in between. I don't expect all the 5s to fall, but I also don't expect to be able to get a 5 over there on the VB. Anyway, this is what we're pulling right now, and we'll probably get the better trains over on this side, although we only have 40% of that. We have 50% of that. I don't know. At the end of this operating round, everybody's going to have an opportunity to start merging their minor companies. One thing you might have noticed, or not, I'm not sure, is the most recent companies to float haven't been buying mail runs. this is a point in the game where the money is really tight, and I'm not going to make back that important money at this point in the game in the amount of rounds of mail runs I'm going to have. Later in the game, maybe I'll buy one, but of course then the game won't be as long, so I won't make as much back off of them. So it could well be that I just never buy them for these companies. Phase change scraps the Type 2 Plus trains. All the mountain railways are closed, and we'll be using, you know, the normal 1830 style changes there, 3 operating rounds, higher values, blah, blah, blah. All the values go up to gray. So the biggie here is that the 2 Plus trains are going away, which kind of means the miners all want to merge as soon as possible. They're unable to make money. None of them have the 3 Plus train on it. I see the 3 Plus train as really an unlikely purchase. Maybe if people use their corporations to get a lot of money into the miners, but I believe those are fixed, which means you have to buy all the 2 Pluses before you can buy a 3 Plus. If you could buy just a 3 Plus and you had a really good token set up, I don't know if anybody does here, not necessarily a really good token set up, but like the 4 and the 5 has this run, and they can come from up there, and that's not too bad. And that means the brown prices on these probably not going to happen. Nobody's going to actually score those unless they get that 3 Plus. It's very hard to do sort of the magic turnover that happens in 1830 here. In fact, it's almost impossible, but you don't get... So what's impossible, there used to be in 1830, sometimes you fell into a position, or you could engineer it, but it was tough to engineer, where one corporation could start at 90 or 100 and buy 2 5 trains at 450 each. Here, the maximum starting gives you 930 in capital, unless something really weird happens. I can't imagine what that is, actually. I'm thinking if you could cross the line before you run, but you can't. And this costs 1,060 to buy 2 of them. So you're not going to get 2 permanent trains right out of the gate. This has close to the money for it, but not quite enough. And I had to build some track. Ugly track, because what I can't play, the piece I want to play is the sharp turn this way, right? I can't play that because the straight that goes along with that has to go that way. And there's only one sharp turn double doinker type piece in the standard sets. And so this is the only piece that really kind of gets me what I want. I guess I could have taken a straight across if I would rather, but I don't know. Neither one makes much difference, I don't think. Let's see, a sharp hook here. That piece doesn't exist. The upgrade that I'm thinking of does not exist. So, what if I do this one? That doesn't do what I want. What was I doing? I wanted this. I can't do that. Obviously I can't do that. Can't do that. Yeah, I think let's see if the double curve does me. That's not particularly bad, I guess. It doesn't really matter what I have on the track, as long as it's legal to play. The thing I'm looking at is what the city will look like. So this will be an X, whereas this would be a crow's foot, which I could put this way. I like this the best. We'll go with that. But they don't make much difference, and I had to, of course, pay for that track. Went back, bought our train, not buying a mail run, and now we slide down to the VB. Horror seems to have taken place. I was looking, this guy made 52 bucks off his VB. And I don't know what happened to the rest of his cash. It must have gotten absorbed, probably into the 6. I'm not entirely sure. I'm gonna have to look back and see if I can figure it out, because if there was no money on the 6, that makes sense, but maybe somewhere else I'm saying there's way too much cash on here. It seems pretty obvious that happened, so I don't know what's going on until I can resolve that. Going back to the end of the last operating round, there was a $50 bill on top, so I'm assuming this money got absorbed in there. We don't know if that's absolutely correct. I could be stealing money from my company, but I think it's more likely than... It certainly wasn't all over here. And it looks like... I don't think there was a train here when he ran. I can't fucking remember. Let me go look at that. Indeed, there was a train there. Now, this is like the worst place on the board. It's the one. It's my blind spot because I'm always kind of standing kind of close to the board, and this is near the edge, so I don't tilt all the way down, whatever. So this wasn't caught. Let's look at what his run would have been from the 6 train. He would have been running a 2+, I believe, which would go 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 45, and 45. Now this just came, yeah. This is pretty close. I don't know what happened, but I really can't justify, I don't know. But throwing extra money in there is probably a safer thing. He has, if anything, about $10 less than he possibly could, and we'll just leave it as that and chalk it up to, hey, sometimes money gets merged where you don't want it. And then to finish up this turn, the VB is going to buy that 5 train for $1. Now, this isn't as simple as in some of the games. The main reason being this guy does not even need the 4 train yet. He will, but whatever. The 5 train, so the 3 train will be running dink dink dink, and maybe I can get, you know, a connection somewhere else. But the 5 train runs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up here, and that looks pretty good actually. The 3 train, well, we'll make what we can off of it. This is pretty decent, but if we can get another exit, that's great. But we just bought a train, which means the VB goes up this way, and we bought it off of the SB, who goes down this way. Now, you'll notice his price went up, but again, his position kind of went, maybe not backwards, but it stayed steady, and the same thing here. So there's not as much effect from this as, say, you know, selling shares or anything like that. But it gives an interesting little piece, because I was able to rise a level, not rise a level as if I was sold out, but rise a level anyway, avoiding maybe a barrier. And this guy, when he sells out, will make up the level he has, assuming that nobody sells all his shares. So that ends the VB's turn, and I think the only one remaining is the SD, which is over here. And the sweat's dripping off of me. It's only like 90 degrees, but there's a little bit of humidity, decent amount, and you know, it's like living anywhere else, really. But I don't want to break down and turn the AC on. And the stock round ends with the SD running, swallowing, dropping back, and buying itself, obviously, a 5 train there, which gives it its permanent train. It's got a lot of cash coming to it someday. But as of, well, if I ever cross the line, I may not. But if I don't, I get a lot of cash that way too. But upgraded here, this is an important space. My dot's there. I want to try to make, you know, if I can get that gray, that's great. The only problem with the gray is that potentially opens it up to another company slipping in that way, but that's okay. I'm not going to get another company, but whatever. Anyway, this is sort of the natural train fall. Is, hey, look, all the companies have filled out. Everybody's got a train, at least. There are a couple of people with 3s and 4s. We've got the 5s out. Nobody had the cash to push an extra train out. When I played Opposed, I was able to buy a train that people weren't expecting me to buy, one of the 5s. And with a company, you know, that could have held out a little longer, kind of in this kind of position. This guy actually has the money for the 5, but he didn't get the opportunity to buy the 5 because he went too early with his track lays. Now, does he have enough for the 6? Probably, with a swallow, which means we are going to get a chance, though, here, as the operating round slips and all the privates are gone, for the minors to cut deals. And most of them kind of want to do it because, quite simply, none of them have a train that runs. Guess the big question when it comes to that is, who does this guy want to help? Player 1 has two of these. They're in fair shape and probably will, you know, merge with one another unless somebody offers him some great deal. That gives him 100% of it, whatever. He also gets the second token pick, which means he doesn't get shut out of any good tokens. He might be able to get this one, if this one's the preferable one. That's what's hard to tell, is whether it's better to be running out in this direction, or if you want to be closer in, but you're blocked off, at least for now, until the gray comes out, from being able to slip into those locations next to Vienna. And the gray comes out when the 8 train comes out. It's the 7th phase. So 1 has a decent amount of money, more than anyone else does. He's not going to cut a deal with 5. That would just be saving 5's ass. He can burden someone with rail 5 is the whole deal. The best money's over here on the 6, but the 4 is also available with decent money. And that's where we have to decide is, you know, do we want to work with this guy and make a better company, or this guy and make a better company? And it really doesn't make too much difference. If I look at the stocks and valuations, he's got 80–90% and 2 corporations under his control. He's sitting on only 50%, so I'm going to actually work with this fella because I think it's the best of the choices. And now I get to choose one of these tiles because I'm going to be the president. Now that's the other side of it. If I don't work with him, he would be the president. Like, if the 5 was not an unreasonable choice, if no matter what, you know, they were all going to be valid companies with a decent amount of money, the 5 is not a bad, you know, the 4 would be getting a presidency with one, you know, with either the 5 or 6. They would get the control of the company. For whatever it matters, I'm not sure how much the control of these minor major companies really makes a difference. And since everybody merged, they're all in here, the mini-map is cleared. Get a little bit more space. But the biggie, in terms of actual play value, there's a lot of new tiles back in the mix. In some cases, ones that could have been significantly restricted. We saw this in the Opposed game I was playing. This space couldn't be upgraded to the green tile that it required because the player chose a tile that could only be upgraded to one green tile, just because of the restriction on the space and how he placed it, and he ended up stuck in a position where he couldn't upgrade for a long time, and it really kind of hosed him for the course of the game. Anyhow, so we start a new stock round, and you know, we got new companies in place. The A is split over there. I'll see if I can shift things a little bit more, because we've got player 4, 5, and 6 have the weight of the corporations over on their side. Just the way things turned out this time. A quick flurry of upgrades of tiles. Most of the companies swallowing here. I think all of them actually. VB29, NT26, KT23, KE only 11. But all were within striking range of that 6 train. Really the iffiest one was the KE. They swallowed and bought a $100 dot and didn't make a lot of money. But if they have to swallow twice was the problem. So I think if they get another swallow, they have enough for that 6 train. But the problem is the KR had enough cash to swallow and buy that 6 train. Doing an upgrade here. An upgrade which prevents this from ever actually hooking up, because the gray tile has a blank space on it too. And that means all the 3 trains are dead, which means they're all up here available for the miners. That's a good thing for the miner, well, the major miners, or whatever you want to call them, these A, B, and C lines, because the 2 train is crushed when the first 4 train is bought again. That may or may not happen, but it's pretty likely. And they're a really bad investment. But some of the companies may be so cash poor that they can't afford the $200 3 train. In fact, I think 2 of the 3 are, which means they've got problems too. And I don't know. Yeah, this guy was interested. I don't think. This guy may not have wanted to buy it. Yeah, it looks like he has 200 bucks on here. Well, no, it's 230. He's kind of screwed. Oh well. Anyway, that's the first of the 6s. There are only 2 6s, just like in 1830. Same train mix, basically. Somebody's going to get that, but it's not this guy. He doesn't have the cash. I don't know if the SD does. Doesn't look too. No, the SD looks like it's kind of poor because it just bought its permanent train. So whoever's going first up there might be the KE. In which case they did a pretty sweet job. Of course, this is the second operating round out of 2. So we have no idea what's going to happen with those stock prices. And let's see, somebody paid out. The good old SD with its permanent train, not a lot of cash on it. It ran for 20 a share. Paid that out. Give himself some money to invest in his own company, but also in other certificates. The A, B, and C show up in order of decision making, and the A, which had the 1, was able to buy that 3 train. The B was not, but able to buy a 2, and will be floating and working. But the C, stuck way out here, which maybe not too terrible. I mean, I can hook in here, maybe even get a dot there if nobody else takes that. And it's kind of iffy for anyone else too. And that may be my path into Vienna or something. Or maybe it stays open and I can get into Vienna, which might end up a long-term good thing, but he was shafted with money. He only has 151 bucks. That means the president, this guy, is going to have to pay essentially oh no, these are only 130. Okay. so he can buy a train as well. I thought I needed the 230, but no. But yeah, it leaves two of the companies sitting with a train that may not last very long. It's not even possible to crash these until the 8 train comes out. And when it does, somebody has to buy the 4 train as a rusted train. Around for this stock round, there's actually not a hell of a lot of money in people's hands because of all the swallows. This guy actually had a pile, and he bought himself a couple of KRs. He's got more money, he can buy another certificate. But this guy is over his certificate limit now. Now, it was, I think, the VB that was in the orange, or yeah, it had to be the VB that was in the orange, rose up because it was sold out, I think. Although I'm not so sure. And then bought a train which gained it a space. So it looks like he was illegal, but I think he was actually legal. But now I gotta do something about this, and this is tough. I think I'd love to get more of these into my hands, into the company, get more money into the company treasury by buying more certificates from that. But I'm not going to be able to do that. I could sell the directorship of the A, but the A is pretty decent. I don't want to do that. So I'm left trying to sell something. Well, I got 50% of the NT even if I sell one, so I guess that's where I'm going to go, even though it hurts my stock value over there. One of the problems of playing this solo is I forget how much money people have. This guy, I marked him with an option on the KR that he bought. And then I noticed, gosh, when I came back around, he had enough money he could have bought the whole share. I think what happened was I forgot to pay after marking the option, so I charged him that. But, you know, there could be huge errors anytime I play this. This is really killing everyone. Well, it's killing that guy. Everyone else is kind of the low money, so it's kind of a suppression on how well he's doing. He's got a pile of money. He could buy another, you know, a couple shares at least. Anyway, what's sold out and what isn't? The VB and SD are sold out. These guys aren't because they've got their 10% shares out now. Where's the KE got 10%? Oh, the K. We're here actually. Doesn't make a difference. It's still the same number. Yeah, the KE's got its 10% shares out for some reason. Okay. And so yeah, the SD and VB are the only ones that are sold out. These guys are also sold out though. And I believe they go up in stock value as long as their shares are there. Their shares are weird. Most of the shares you have, you know, however many 10% holdings you have is the value. You know, like if you have if you have a 40% share, you get 4 times the value. These guys are 50% shares, but they're only worth that. Each of the 50% shares is worth that. It's more than they, you know, more than they were worth as miners, because their value just disappears as miners. You can't sell them or anything, but and now they get a chance to grow some stock value. And we got priority where, not that it matters too much, but it's over here if anybody's holding way too much of the SB or even the VB, it could be an issue. So we got 20% shares of the VB out. Now when it crosses the line, it will be a potential hit. And it's hard to pay attention to that. And this guy's got 2 companies. There's a good chance that he might move everything over to the SB. And the problem with that? Well, the SB is in a shitty position. Of the SB, I just noticed this track. He ran it. The intention was to build track that went up there. I'll try to figure out Oh. No. I'll try to figure out which track lay he wanted there. I think the KE actually doesn't have enough money for this 6 train. We were planning on a 5. I'm going to have to dig into my pocket. Might even have to sell a share. Had a mistake you don't want to make. There's no real purpose to it. Buying the extra share. Except that I bought the 10% option on the KR, which means that I can get a second 20% share here. And I sold a 10% share of my KE that I couldn't really sell in the stock round. Now, the KE is a good company and I probably do want those shares, but I want to buy them out of here, if possible, or whatever. And it looks like the KR is going to run a little harder. It's not going to crash for a train. It's, you know, so I've already lost the income for one round with this, and then on top of that, it's going to have less trainage than the KR does. Of course, the KR is not all that well set up to run 2 trains, but that's life. Decided to set, since I have this space here, the piece of the certificates down where they supposedly belong, but man, they're really kind of flooding that area. Because basically these routes are running for low money up against the line, the FJ, the SB, and just crossing over it. These are people who aren't doing terribly well, don't have a huge position in terms of they don't have too many certificates. So we're up to a 9 certificate limit now. Let me think, there was something else I wanted. Oh yeah, so unlike 1830, there's no option to jump in and buy an 8 train once the first 6 is bought. There's nothing special about that, but there is the availability of either the 8 or the 80E or OX or whatever at this point. Of course, they're both expensive trains. The 8's a 900, which is pretty hefty. There's no trade-ins or anything like that. And the 80E is 1200. So all that extra money that's being created, you know, from these certificate splits and then the money going back into the companies, that's got a lot of distance to go, and probably means to get those, at least the 80E, you're going to need to do a big swallow. What's awesome about the 80E, I didn't really explain it, not only can it run to these spaces, and it's the only train that can run to these pretty awesome spaces, but it's a skip train. It doesn't have to hit all the stations. It picks the 8 it wants to hit along the route, which is really awesome. We're at one of the great decision points. So the VB was running, pumped out, went over the line, the hopes of, instead of a slow swallow with a 5 train, getting enough money together that maybe they could buy the 80E, because hey, we hit here and we got a shot, depending on what happens, of maybe cutting through and being able to get somewhere else. I'm trying to see, yeah, there's even a track that could get us through that space with the tunnel. But alternatively, there's this space down here and whatever. And depending on the timing, since we go between the SB and the NT, we're likely to be able to get the dot here, unless someone connects it up that way and does it. Okay. But we don't have a lot of money. We're under $600. When we get to the KT over here, he's got 800 bucks on board. Now, he could run and swallow. I don't know what his run's worth. He just upgraded Vienna. He doesn't have room for a dot, or he doesn't have cash for a dot and the train. Oh, only 800. He needs 900. Uh-oh. So 60. So he's not going to be able to do it. 100. 1, 2, 3, 4. 180. If he swallows, he could buy the train, and the dot. But he may actually desire that 80E. And I gotta think about this because, see, he's liable to be able to get in here. He'll buy the 8 train right now, and all his worries are over, but then he doesn't get the 80E. Or it's 3 swallows, or the purchase of some of these shares. And that's the whole thing, is basically I have 40%, I can get 2 of those shares. That's a couple $100. That's one of those swallows. Of course, not if I'm swallowing, because then it'll be less money, because my stock value will start creeping down. This is really, really tough. I don't even know if I have an 8 run, but that doesn't really mean, you know, because this, basically, I don't have a dot here and I don't have a dot here. And I'm running 1, 2, and I don't have one up here. I just don't have the kind of control around the Vienna area to be able to assure anything. Whereas something like the SD has another dot. This is pretty useless. Nobody's going down there, it looks like. Of course, nobody's going down here either. But a dot here would allow the SD to run up and around. And that's kind of sweet. I really don't know. I mean, this is, and alternatively, instead of doing that, I could just curve this way. If I got a dot here, or cut through this way, well, who knows, you know? There's a lot of possibilities available with that 80E. Of course, the SD is not going to get an 80E. He's sitting on a 5 train and just isn't going to have the cash. By the way, I turned these guys upside down because they were really confusing me. I saw a 3 train and I'm like, oh, somebody didn't crash. Oh, shit. No, perfectly legitimate. It's this. So, yeah, I really don't know. The thing that's convincing me towards buying the 8 train is I don't have a lot of value. But I just split and got a lot of cash in my hand. So, you know, there's an opportunity there. But there's another factor here. The Franz Joseph also has its entire well, it has 50% in the offering. So there's going to be a lot of money between these two. I might be able to afford one of the 80Es. If I buy the 8 now, I crush this, I take this away, and I think overall that helps me more than trying to save up, especially when I might be able to get one of the 80Es anyway. And I certainly can't get 2 runs that go across the country. But the thing is, it would be nice to get Constantinople on both companies or something. The 8s are out and we're in phase 7. The gray tiles are available and I can take one of these very limited pieces for the KR. Unfortunately, I don't have enough money for a dot. Otherwise, I would have maybe wanted to upgrade this because there's only one more dot in there in the final piece. And then I could have played the dot, but I don't have that cash, so I just ran for 20 a share. I'm not gonna get that dot. I don't have a way to get money into my treasury. I didn't buy a mail run, and I'm not gonna swallow. Although, you know, this is nice. I can find money in other directions eventually once the cash flow gets into my corporation. I'm only running a 6 train. I don't see that expanding too much. I might end up at, well, no, I might end up having a lot of cash in here because there's that 50% sitting here, so that's another $500. It'll be tempting to swallow for a couple of times for 400. I don't know. That's a lot of money. I might be building a lot of track instead. A fairly big forced train purchase here. Not huge, out of pocket, but still $200 out of pocket, which, yeah, that's a pretty big hit. And now we go to the little local minors, or local majors, which have to kind of worry, because these guys with the 2 train, if one of them buys, if somebody buys a 4 train over there, those 2 trains go away. They don't go away on the normal train situation. The 3 is safe. Now for the minor. Didn't have enough money for a dot, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But so I upgraded this last brown tile here. That's I think that's the last brown city. So this is pretty much the city map that we're going to see. I don't see any other cities that are available until and unless, you know, something like this upgrades. But that's really the only spot that could turn into a city still. Okay, what's up? Well, I'm $10 short from a dot. Otherwise I would have upgraded this, slapped a dot in there, and then I could run my little 3 train 1, 2, 3 and ignore my starting location. I got a pretty good run. 6, 11, 15. I could swallow $150. That gets me the dot. Not enough money for a second train. I'm allowed 2 trains. So, what's up? I mean, I could buy a 2 train if I swallow, and that might not be too terrible. Because when I look at the other companies, neither of them has money for a dot either, so they're not going to beat me in there. As things stand right now, well, the C's kind of hosed off here, but the B could get a dot. And there's a number of dots that are interesting. All 3 of these are interesting, and somewhat less so up here. I think it's worth it. Yes, I'm throwing away $75 for myself and for my buddy over here. But I'll get a guaranteed run in there, and I get a second train, which unless somebody buys the 4 train, runs pretty well. And if somebody buys a 4 train, or if somebody looks like they're swallowing for a 4 train, because they don't have a lot of money on those companies, I can start swallowing up so I have a 3 and a 4 instead of a 2 and a 3. And that should happen pretty quickly with those 2 trains. Probably one more swallow if somebody runs for it. If they don't, I've got a pretty good run. So I think I'm going to swallow this $150 and buy a train. I'm still going to do that, but I was wrong. There's $70 over on this sucker, which is a pretty good amount of money, actually. He's going to be able to upgrade and put the dot right in Vienna, and that gives him a 2 train. Or conceivably he could get the pathway coming out, but that pathway coming out is not as important as Vienna itself. I'm running tiny little trains. I'd like to run to here, and you know, as long as anything's open here, I can hit even with a 3 train if I need to. But I got 2 trains coming out here if I do. Question here though is, do I swallow with them as well and get a second train? Now this poor sucker is sitting here with not enough money. This is the guy who was the weakest of them, the one that kind of got forced to start, I think. Worst position, can't get a dot anywhere terribly interesting easily. I mean, I could blast my way through. Well, no, because there aren't any tile upgrades. I could blast my way through down here. All I got is a 2 train. I'm the only one with space who can buy that 4 train and crush these runs. No other company can even help with this anymore, because these trains are not allowed to be held by the other companies. Unlike the Plus trains, you can't buy the obsolete train on your old company, and you can't buy a real train onto the new companies, the little locals. So I'm kind of stuck with no growth, no expansion, nothing. I'm just going to be running for 35 and 35, and that kind of sucks. Honestly, I don't know if I should be too upset with a single certificate that's making me $35 plus a little bit of share value on each run. So I don't think that'll get sold. It's just, it's going to be far worse than what the other miners do. And this is funny. My assumption was the miners were going to be good over on the little map because, hey, I get half the money and half the money goes into the treasury so I can keep producing and getting bigger. But these guys are pretty well set up. I don't know if it's always the case, but they're pretty well set up to get into Vienna, get some good runs going. And that means they're going to be making pretty damn good money on those single certificates. We're going to leave things as they are, but there was a little confusion in my mind because I had this token here when it should have been up here, I think. That's how I'm playing it. And until I started recording the price, the payouts, and thinking about it too much, there was some thought that, hey, we're just about ready to start a new stock run, but that's not the case. Some of these companies might have swallowed rather than paying out to avoid crossing the line. Because if you're right at the line, you do a swallow, you fall back, you pay out, and you get some cash into the company treasury, and you get more cash into your personal holdings because you've got a higher percentage when you make the runs. I'm just clarifying that. You know, in the case of those companies that were on the edge there, probably the owners of them could have made a little bit more money. On the other hand, it's hard to tell because the further advanced you get, the more the value jumps, just like at 1830. You can see here, you know, $4 or so, but then up here, you know, we're looking at some significant jumps in value. With the 8 train coming out, the SV was left without a train. I better keep a buck on board. They threw what little money they had into the VB to buy the 5 train. The VB has more cash and will take less of a hit on his stock holdings when he buys the 8 train there. That forced purchase ended up being a $300 hit to the pocket, as well, of course, to the fallback. We certainly would have swallowed with both these companies knowing that the 8 was coming out, but we didn't know that. And also, obviously, that would have given us some advantages in terms of, hey, we'd still have all those shares. Ended up being a pretty big hose for us. We should have foreseen that. Here's a real gotcha. It looks like there's a lot of track in this game. Now the reality is, I think there's about as much as there is in an 1830 or something. There's not a lot of space on this board though, so it ends up being a good proportion. But the tiles are very thick, so the stacks look big. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. I know I intended to. But look at the brown stack. It's not very big at all. And there's some significant, like, there's one of each piece, basically. So someone used this piece. And that means it's not available here. There's a much more limited set of brown upgrades. And that's kind of crappy because this seems almost natural. I think 1830 has like 2 of each of the browns, except for a couple of them. They have 3 that are really common. But it really hurts not to be able to play, you know, a couple of certain pieces. Just, they tend to naturally happen. The 8 trains in play, the KT, for example, making a huge run, 37 a share. That can get bigger. Obviously, it's not going to hit this sucker, but it can be improved a little bit. He's hitting 8 cities. It could also get cut a little bit because the KT's using these northern paths up here in addition, and of course this could get cut, in which case they would be sliced up pretty badly if a couple of those dots fell. We'll see. You know, most of the dots over here have been used. The C could come in and drop one there. Who owns that? That's owned over here. He's not terribly interested in the KT. Not sure if anyone else has too much available. I mean, pink has a dot, green has dots, but they don't have a lot of cash. And if they're going to start generating cash, this guy, he's going to be generating 40 bucks a turn off his, so he'll be able to lay that dot at some point. His intention, though, was to drive him westward. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So now the question becomes, okay, where do I sleaze out and drop a dot? What's important to me that I don't already have? And what might slice someone? Now, obviously, all this open means these three companies have a nice path going through. But if you start, you know, if you dump a dot here, that's fine because your SD is holding those, so that works pretty well. Anyway, 37 a share is pretty damn good. We'll see how long they get to keep that up. Now I found another screw up. I was lifting this track up to see, hey, I can upgrade this and go up here into this, you know, into this. The 50 bucks paid here, I don't think anybody's been terribly running it, but there should have been a doinker, a double doinker there. I don't know why I didn't see that, just trouble processing, I guess. Anyhow, not sure why there's a mountain here when the water is what's associated with the cost. I don't know if the mountain, the railway that can reduce mountain costs counts for that or not. Anyway, the only thing I can see doing is placing, from Red's perspective, what they would have done there. I don't know. Too much late night tile laying, I think. Anyway, one thing I wanted to talk about and then forgot about, you know, I saw that error and said, hey, I want to talk about that, but then there was something else that had been burning on the back. Was the SD here, which isn't running tremendous run, but it's got a 26 run. But the thing is, he's holding 80% of it. So that's kind of nice money made, and he's going to jump over the line just at the perfect time, get a whole flush of cash in hand, if he wants to. He could choose not to. If he has enough cash, maybe he'll withhold, build up for a bigger train to make the cross at that point. The problem, of course, is you kind of want to make money, you know? And that bigger train is what, 900 divided by 260 is 3 swallows. Add that in. Well, yeah. So we're looking at 3 swallows with this money in play. So, but he's doing it on a little 5 train. He's got nice track over here. Eventually it'll hook up down here, make a little bit more maybe, once somebody can buy a tunnel. And it doesn't look like his track is worth swallowing for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know. Maybe he could add a significant amount, but then he'd still have that 5 train, which I don't know what it would do. If he's running all that track, it would be hard to find a way to make it through because there's no connection here. There's no connection here, even though I've been playing it as though it is because the damn gray tile. Some people's runs are incorrect. Those tiles that don't have spaces, once they get tokened up, it's hard to see that there's no connection there. And the way the dots fell and the way the train connections fell, the A is really screwed. Sitting here with 2 trains on it, a 3 and a 2. I mean, I can run a 3 and a 2, there's no question, but I lost all that nice access that I was set up for. And yeah, I have the money for the dot. It just didn't get laid, and I'm not quite sure why. Because I wasn't hooked up before. That's why I had to do upgrades and stuff, and it just didn't happen. I was hoping to get into Vienna, and now I got cut off completely. So that run's gonna only be 90, 160, 190. Drops us into the final operating round, the B. Nice run. 240 bucks right in his pocket plus stock value, which is negligible. But yeah, those 2 twos, that token, that all worked pretty well, whereas his situation buying the train and not the token, and I'm really not sure why he didn't get a token here. That would have done him a lot of good, but he didn't. And I mean, it's still good money. It's just not as good as the 2-2 trains with the token is doing. And he doesn't have room to buy that extra train. The only person who does is the C, who is kind of running a moribund little, 35-35 for the rest of the game. And one more operating round, and then we're ready to go back into the stock round. There's a lot of cash sitting around. And you would be saying, okay, the game's about over, except a lot of that cash is going to go into the companies just kind of for free as these shares get bought up. And realize also the SB, SD, well, the SB is already in. The SD is going in. Oh, KE's not going to make it yet. KR is going in as well. So there's a lot of new shares available, and some of them are going to produce a decent amount of money. We're getting up to rich share certificates to certificate limits as well at 10, and that obviously that's going to get boosted. We're going to be at the 8 companies going over, right? Looks like it to me. Looks like every company is going to be in, which means we're going to be at 12 certificate limit, which is, you know, your 1830 dynamic at that point, except for the fact that there's going to be hordes of cash. 50% of the companies, a lot of them are still out there, and that's going to be, you know, at about $100 a share, or higher if things wait. So there's room for those big trains to come in, right? You know, a $500 influx, yeah, that's just a swallow to an 8. Maybe that's worth it, probably. Screwing up left and right. Somehow this track got placed where these were the components that were there. This is the track that should have been played. It does what red intended, I don't know. And that means this was available and somebody would have picked this sucker up. So I'm gonna put this in here for later runs. As to some of the errors, you know, most of them are just a couple bucks on a run here and there. So I'm not gonna worry too much about them. In fact, when I looked at the runs that are being made here by the FJ and KR, they essentially have the same runs. So for example, the KR is making 22 a share. It's more blocked off now. Maybe there are upgrades that weren't there, but we're not talking, you know, we're not talking about a lot of money having switched hands. It's maybe $1 a share or something. And likewise, the FJ here, they actually boosted themselves up to 29 because they have a lot of the dots here. So they've got a lot of the mobility, but all that mobility was present before until all the dots filled up. The one thing is, anybody who didn't have this is a little bit more suspect. If you didn't have the Vienna dot, you might have had more trouble because I might have been counting you, you know, running down or something like that. But we'll see how that works out. I don't think that had much effect. This actually had an effect. There were people, but again, it's only $1 or $2 because there were plenty of cities to run to. And now somebody's built the tunnel, I don't remember which of them, probably the FJ, so that we can hit Budapest, which is more valuable than Pressburg. So it's kind of moot, but at least the track's used up, because that's really where the problem was now if that piece of track suddenly became available, it might make a difference somewhere, although I don't think it really would. So we can say they kind of evened out, because this extra track probably would have made up for whatever I cheated money-wise. Anyway, we've got companies buzzing past. The KR just buzzed past the line. The SB is going to buzz past it, but it's already on 10% shares. Worse in terms of total standing, I found a $100 bill under the $10, which probably means somebody slipped 100 into the bank accidentally. Too bad for them. I have no way to tell who did it. It's one of the dangers of using paper money, but you know, it's not the kind of thing that happens during a post play. But yeah, the results of my games are always kind of suspect just because there's probably some mechanical errors. Had a reason to build this track. Yay, a lot of money spent, but it adds another city, which is important for the 8 train for KB. It's running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No OE on this, so I'm not going all the way. Well, we had a bank that was not too far from breaking. Yeah, another operating round and it would have been over, but I think if we look at the payouts, we're looking at payouts in 38, 35, but on the other hand, we got people below 20 even. This is the SB, which is really, it's pretty impressive how well it's doing given the track it's sitting on. It can't run its whole train, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's got another space on a crappy little 5 train. But everything might break open. There's a lot of shares to buy. That's a lot of cash going back into the company because our cert limits actually should be at 11, I think now, right? There is only one company that... No, KR went over as well. All the companies... I just forgot to flip them. I took care of the rest of the stuff. All the companies have broken the barrier, which means we're at 12 certificates each, so even this guy with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 still has a fair amount of room. There are no great buys out there, though. There's no 20% shares that are going to be available. Anyway, the stock round's probably going to be the biggest thing. I'm not going to spend too much time on the operating rounds anymore. If this was 1830, they would all be pro forma. I mean, it's just a matter of hooking stuff up. But they're not quite. There's the possibility that things break open, that there's enough money that some of these bigger trains become available. So either this is the last set of operating rounds, I think it works that way, or some of those trains are coming out because that bank's not going to hold up through 3 operating rounds. It might have made 1, it ain't going to make 3. You can look at the money, and we're not counting the fact that these suckers, you know, one of them pulled out 250, that guy over there with a couple of deuces coming right out of Vienna. So, and that's all into one person's pocket. That's pretty damn sweet if you ask me. Anyway, we'll load this one up.